Very interesting.
I'm not sure I can live up to the high standards of Harvard commencement speakers. Last year, J.K. Rowling, the billionaire novelist who started as a classic student, graced this podium. The year before, Bill Gates, the mega-billionaire philanthropist and computer nerds, stood here. Today, sadly, you have me. I'm not a billionaire, but at least I am a nerd.
At least I am a nerd. And now to kick off Geek Week, I finally get to interview the man who caused this show a year ago to buy rights to the URL atleastiamanerd.com. Honestly, to this day, if you go to atleastiamanerd.com, you get redirected to the Rachel Maddow Show website. We also redirect from empathizerightonyourbehind.com, which is a quote from Michael Steele. But so far, us buying that URL hasn't been enough to get Chairman Michael Steele to agree to an interview. And you know what? If he finally calls us back this week, I'm not sure he would qualify for a Geek Week interview anyway. I don't know. But our nation's 12th Energy Secretary, Chu, definitely qualifies as a geek. Dr. Chu holds undergraduate degrees in math and physics, as well as a doctorate in physics. He's formerly of Bell Labs. He was a professor of physics and molecular and cell biology. He was head of the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. He and two others were awarded the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1997 for developing methods to cool and trap atoms with lasers. You know, as you do. In an era of rife anti-intellectualism, anti-science medievalism, following an administration in which the previous president appointed an energy secretary who distinguished himself previously in the Senate by introducing a bill to eliminate the Department of Energy, having a new energy secretary who actually knows Nobel Prize-winning stuff about energy has been a big change of pace. What hasn't been a big change of pace is Secretary Chu's mandate. President Carter created the Department of Energy and named its first secretary in 1977. See if this sounds familiar.
The energy crisis has not yet overwhelmed us, but it will if we do not act quickly. We simply must balance our demand for energy with our rapidly shrinking resources.
We must act quickly to balance our need for energy with the resources available. Danger, Will Robinson. Danger! Immediate action coming! Urgent! Urgent! Even then, when the Energy Department was being created in the late 70s, even then, those pretty words from a president, even then, were already old hat.
A massive program must be initiated to increase energy supply, to cut demand and provide new standby emergency programs to achieve the independence we want by 1985. Increasing energy supplies is not enough. We must take additional steps to cut long-term consumption.
Energy independence by 1985, emergency programs, cut consumption, increase supplies. That was Gerald Ford speaking in 1975. That was even before Carter. That was even before the founding of the Energy Department. For my entire lifetime, the sure things in life have been death, taxes, and presidents promising that they have very urgent feelings about oil and energy. I could show you the same clips from Nixon and Reagan and Clinton, and even from the most pro-oil president imaginable.
Keeping America competitive requires affordable energy. And here we have a serious problem. America is addicted to oil.
It sounds great, right? It's great politics. It sounds great for presidents to talk about getting us off oil. They all say it. Then when it comes to making policy, they tend to do things like having the head of the oil services company they've named as vice president convene literally secret meetings with an energy task force made up of oil companies to write the nation's actual energy policies. Politicians love to talk tough about oil and energy. They also love to not rock the boat too much. And the boat, such as it is, floats on a sea of oil. President Obama does not have a Dick Cheney, and nobody thinks that his Energy Secretary, Chu, wants to abolish his own department like Spencer Abraham did under George W. Bush. But as the Obama administration has tried to implement policies to goose the renewable energy sector, the last year and a half have provided a series of nightmarish energy headlines. Nightmarish headlines from the very, 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 very non-renewable side of energy. The Upper Big Branch Massey coal mining disaster in West Virginia. At the beginning of last month, 29 miners killed at a mine operated by a company known for proud, chauvinistic flaunting of regulations and a bald political interest in buying off people who might otherwise oversee them. A month before that, just a month earlier, the arrest in Yemen after a shootout of a man reportedly linked to al-Qaeda who had managed to get himself employed at a number of New Jersey nuclear power plants. What could possibly go wrong? And now this. The BP oil disaster in the Gulf of Mexico, still out of control, still not yet at the full reach of the disaster that it is still becoming every day. Oil, coal, nuclear. All industries that, even when used as directed, are fairly disastrous. All industries that we, apparently as a nation, are as yet incapable of regulating and overseeing so they can operate safely. By which I mean at a low level of environmental disaster. Now, the production of energy isn't tiddlywinks. We have something like 4.6% of the world's population, and we use more than 20% of the world's energy. Numbers like that, frankly, mean it's going to be a mess, regardless. But what's the plan for making it less of a mess? What's the plan for getting better, for making our energy situation less of a constant disaster? Not just the pretty words about energy independence and being a clean energy leader, like every president says. What's this administration actually doing? They are investing big time, particularly through the stimulus, in renewables, and wind and solar and geothermal and more. They are putting in place new fuel efficiency standards for vehicles that are way better than the old standards. For the first time, for example, they include big trucks, which seems smart. They also spent their first year in office approving lots of new mountaintop removal mining permits, which, if I were the kind of person who uses rape as a metaphor, I would use that metaphor to describe what mountaintop removal does to coal country. They are dramatically upscaling investment in nuclear power, even as our old plants leak and the security issues give even laymen like me nightmares, and there's nowhere to put the waste, including Yucca Mountain. And they're greenlighting more offshore drilling. Even now, greenlighting it routinely without environmental review, greenlighting it even at greater depths than the Deepwater Horizon well, which has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that we have no idea how to drill safely at that depth. Welcome to the brutal world of the most important policy issue in the world that no one can stand to talk about for very long. One cause for optimism concerning our next guest? At least he is a nerd, which does in this case seem like cause for hope. Joining us now from Yale, where he just received an honorary Doctor of Science degree today, is our Energy Secretary, Stephen Chu. Dr. Chu, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Let me ask you first, that was a long introduction. Let me ask you first if you think I've got any of that wrong. Am I being unfair to describe the administration's policies and priorities that way?
Oh, I think a little bit. You did get it right that the Recovery Act made a huge investment in transitioning to cleaner energy. That was $80 billion. The single largest investment in a down payment on a new energy policy, and that's not insignificant. But that, I would say, is just the beginning, a down payment.
I know that you've talked about the fact that the administration has already taken steps toward doubling the amount of energy that we get from sources, renewable sources like wind and solar. That's doubling from a very, very, very small number, of course. By the end of the administration's first term, do you have any estimates, any hopes for what sort of quantitative progress we might have made on having more renewable sources of energy in our nation's overall supplies?
Well, when President Obama took office, the renewable energy, excluding hydro, was something on the order of a little bit less than 4%. He made a pledge to double the amount of renewables, wind, solar, primarily wind, in the next 3 years. We are on track to do that. But that's really taking wind from 3% to 6%. It's going to take several doublings in order to get us up to the place where we need to be.
The stimulus funding, the Recovery Act, as you mentioned, was a source of a huge influx of renewable energy funding. That is not expected to be something that's a constant source of funding. That was expected to be a one-time injection into the economy. Is there a risk that having funded so much renewable energy investment with that type of funding mechanism, that's going to be a one-shot deal? There isn't going to be anything to follow it up?
Well, we hope it's not a one-shot deal. There's always that risk. But on the other hand, what the Obama administration is trying to do is lay the foundation for a longer-term energy policy. And you're quite right. From presidents beginning with Nixon onward, all said that we are addicted to oil. We have to get off of our great dependence on energy. This continues. We will do everything, I will do, and the President will do everything in our power in order to put us on a road to sustainable energy. There's another thing at risk here. There are several things. It's not only using fossil fuel in a much more efficient way and cleaning up our use of fossil fuel and decreasing our dependency on foreign imports. There is a climate issue at risk here as well.
And I know the climate issue is part of your enthusiasm for